And we are live. And we welcome Melanie Sheridan into our classroom at UCST Extension. And we're talking about influence. And knowing that Melanie is an influencer in her own right, and she's also a lifestyle blogger. So why not we just start by you telling us about your background?
Let's see, I fell into blogging completely by accident. I became a stay-at-home mom after a layoff, and I loved being a stay-at-home mom for about 3 months, and then I got extremely bored. I went online looking for other stay-at-home moms in my area that I could connect with socially, found blogs, narrowed it down to find some San Diego bloggers, started my own blog. At first I was anonymous, and then the monetization opportunities came, so I decided not to be anonymous anymore. And thus my blog was launched. So it all came to me purely coincidentally. Then I started working with people, clients. It started with that brain picking. I'd love to talk to you about social media. So yeah, it all just kind of fell in my lap.
Okay. So Melanie, what is the best way to look for influencers, look and find influencers on social media?
There's the free way, which is just nose to the grindstone and doing your own research. There's several paid tools out there that you can use. I do believe in just doing your due diligence and starting the research. So find a particular topic and start following hashtags, looking in Facebook communities and things like that, looking on Twitter and making lists. Then just, like I said, going to each person's site, finding out what they write about, who they are, what they don't write about, because that's just as important. I get a lot of pitches that are completely irrelevant. If they had taken the time to go to my About page and my PR page, they would see that I don't have a daughter. I have a tween. You know, I don't write about baby things. You know, I get so many baby pitches, and it's frustrating to reply back and say, hi, I'm not a fit for this. So eventually I just start to ignore them. So doing your research from the get-go is extremely important.
So just because you're influencer in the mom community, that doesn't mean that you're willing to write just about anything. It has to be, they always say whenever you're trying to pitch or partner with a blogger or an influencer to help you promote your brand, there has to be an alignment of what you sell and what they're interested in. And that's
Absolutely.
a perfect example.
Yes, no, absolutely. The only way that I'll take on a sponsored opportunity is if I can find a way to tell a story. I read a lot of sponsored content that sounds exactly like a press release, and anybody can regurgitate a press release. So when I look for other people to work with, I look through their last maybe 4 or 5 sponsored posts and see how they structure them. And if it comes across from a more personal standpoint, if it reads, you know, if you were to take away the disclosure at the top and the bottom, if you could just read that and post it on its own, does it sound overly sponsored? And if there's somebody who could weave a product or a brand or something into their everyday life without it screaming at you that this is a sponsored post, those are the people that I like to work with. And that's the type of work that I try to provide.
Oh, that's nice. That's the best way to be able to tell a story. That's beautiful. So we've been talking about starting with your micro segments, and we just spent the first good portion of the class going through how you can start with the information on your let's say avatar and look for people that fit that criteria. Okay? And so we talked about finding specific people or groups of people. So let's say I find groups of people that fit the criteria. How do I find out who is the influencer in those communities?
I would start, well, in this day and age, I start with Facebook, that person's Facebook page and their Google Plus, and see how engaged their audience is, because it's no point in... Yes, so if somebody's influential within their community, hopefully that means that they get people talking one way or another. So if you go to somebody's Facebook, their brand page, for instance, and they have 30,000 likes, but each post only has maybe 1 like or 1 comment or no comments, then that's kind of suspect, because that person seems like they are loud, but nobody's listening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I always look at engagement and the conversation that's happening that somebody can generate.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. So then, what advice would you have for people that are trying to find donors for a particular nonprofit? So how would they go about working with an influencer to help them raise money for the nonprofit?
For a nonprofit. Okay. All right. So I'll take an example of a cause, maybe something like pets.
Pets?
There I would go for pets. I was thinking a nonprofit related to pets. So we've got that. I would look for people who are pet owners first, because they would probably be more sympathetic to the cause. See if they have participated in any type of Twitter chat, sponsored chat, anything to do with pets. Go see what companies they have liked or followed and make sure that they kind of align, because just because someone's a pet lover doesn't necessarily mean that the things that they are interested in will align. For instance, I was going to volunteer with an organization to do some social media, but then I went and dug a little deeper. They're very vegan and things like that, and I'm not a vegan, so I thought perhaps I'm not the best fit. So making sure that your values align. And then, so it's all about due diligence and doing your research. So making sure you find somebody they are a pet owner, their values align with your nonprofit, and then that they have an engaged audience that they can amplify that message to.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And now let's go back. Let's say we found this influencer. We did all our due diligence. So what is the best way to approach an influencer to work with them?
If it's cold, then I would go by email. If you haven't made a connection, if you don't know each other either peripherally, either get introduced some way, maybe on LinkedIn, or follow them on Twitter. If they follow back, say, hey, thanks for the follow. I'd love to contact you. May I email you? You can do that in a direct message. Or if you go to that person's page and they have their email, just reach out and send an email. That's how I get 95% of my communications comes to me via email. Be very clear about who you are, who you're representing, and what you want that person to do for them, for you.
Okay. So what types of communication are not the right kind? So have you run into something and said, oh, leave me alone, I don't even want to deal with you, or something?
Yes, I've gotten Twitter spam, hey, how are you? Follow me back, and direct messages in my Facebook. So you go to your other message and you go, whoa, who are all these people? So people messaging me directly on Facebook, that kind of feels almost a little invasive and personal. I prefer an email.
Okay.
I've gotten an actual physical piece of mail before, and that was kind of impressive, because who does that anymore? So that's at least a creative way to stand out. But don't stalk me, basically. Mm-hmm. I don't like to feel like I'm being stalked.
Okay, by stalking you mean by going into sending direct messages?
Right, exactly. Sending me, exactly. DMing me on Twitter, going into and messaging me on Facebook. It's fine if I see that I've had a new follower on Twitter, for instance, or if somebody has liked a page, and then I get an email from them, because at least I know, okay, that's how they found me. They're going to check me out. But I don't like overly aggressive communication tactics.
I see. Now, when it comes to because it has to have a return on investment for the influencer, right? So what is
Correct.
the best way to arrange that?
I'm sorry?
What is the best way to arrange that? Because you and I had a conversation at some point, and you said some people come and, I don't know. Do you remember the conversation we had? We said they tell you, like, it's almost that what they want you to do is not worth your time. So you have to talk to us about making it worth the influencer's time, what they do to you, for you.
There's generally no budget involved, so what you're going to be asking people to do, you're probably asking them to do it for free. And in that case, again, it has to be something I really, really believe in and something I would have supported anyway, regardless of that person, reaching out to me. So in that case, I like it when people are able to tie some type of experience in with that, because I can't tell a story if I'm not involved. So with something like pets, we'll go back to pets. If you can invite me to either a shelter for the day or some place where I can see the work that you are doing and I can help you do it, that's a better way for me to then go back and tell everybody about who you are and who the nonprofit is and what you're doing and why I felt so connected to it that I'm willing to do this, for free.
What a great idea. So then if you're going to, and that's really relevant to your nonprofit, because we're working with two in real life nonprofits, and we're developing a plan for them. So one of the things we can suggest to them is to find local influencers and then invite them. Let's say if you're working with one of the nonprofits that helps the homeless and the mentally challenged and things like that, invite them to the organization so they can see it. So actually find the influencers online and then make connections, bring them into real life so they can actually experience what you do, so they can tell a story about it.
Right, exactly. So if we'll use your homeless example, I'll tell you something that my book club did that we all really enjoyed. We did it on our own, but I could see how this would work for an event. We all made gratitude bags. So everybody went out and bought something separate. There's 30 of us, so one person bought bottled water, one person bought granola bars, all prepackaged things, small toiletries. We assembly lined it, put all those 30 items in a bag, and then we all went to the beach and found people who were homeless. Oh, and then we also wrote a little note in each bag, something like, inspirational, you are loved, thinking of you, things like that. And then we went to the beach and just handed them out to people randomly. So if you have an organization that works with the homeless, inviting those bloggers in or influencers in and saying, yes, we are asking you to bring something with you, but I promise you it'll be a rewarding experience, like that, because we're going to go out and then directly impact somebody's life today.
Beautiful. I love it. So
and you can have that idea.
What?
You can have that idea. You can have that idea.
So there are two important things. One is to make sure you find influencers that, as we've said before, that their values align, that they're passionate about what you do. And then second, to create an opportunity for the influencers so they can tell a story. I love it. That's the first time I hear it that way.
Thank you.
So for a brand or for a nonprofit, how would you suggest let's say they tell their boss, a brand, we're going to participate with this influencer and we're going to give this much away, and how do they go back to tell their boss that this really paid off? So how would you determine that at the end?
Well, it depends on how many people you're working with. Hopefully you have at least a small team. If you've set it up from the get-go, then there's going to be tools that they can use, the influencers can use to tell that story. So you've either got a hashtag that people will be using that day wherever they are. They've already followed you guys on any of your social channels, so they're connected with you on Instagram, they're connected with you on Facebook, Twitter, wherever, prior to the event. And during the event, live tweeting, Instagramming, posting on Facebook while they're there, using those specific metrics. I think hashtags are totally important. If you don't have a hashtag, it's hard to measure how successful something is. And they have to be smart hashtags. Don't give somebody a hashtag that has 82 characters in it, because that doesn't help me help you, because there's nothing I can say if you take up 82 characters of a 140 character tweet. So you've got them there, they're taking their pictures, they're Instagramming, they're live tweeting, they're posting updates on Facebook, and then hopefully you've given them a deadline. If you are going to write about this on your channel, please, we'd love for you to do so by such and such a date, and then if you could send us that link when it's live, just so that we could make sure we leave you a comment and thank you for posting it. That's a way to ask them without actually asking them to, write that post and get them to send you that link. We'd love to thank you on your site, because that increases the engagement. So you've given them those tools, and then you go back and then you check the hashtags, you check the impressions and the metrics around that hashtag, and hopefully again the conversation that would be generated underneath their social channels.
Very nice. That's beautiful. So, does anybody have any questions? No?
No, somebody please ask me something.
So give us an example of some of the things you did as an influencer.
Oh, let's see.
Tell us through the journey. How did they get in touch with you? How was it arranged? You don't need to go into details.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
How did it all start? How did they get in touch with you? Take us from the beginning to the end. And
my first paid campaign, or my first sponsored campaign?
Whichever you want to share.
Okay. Well, let's see. My very first sponsored anything, it was big. It was Disney. They were the first people to get in touch with me and ask me to come on a sponsored trip. They flew me out to Orlando with 8, 10, or 9 other people, specifically to talk to us about The Princess and the Frog.
Oh.
So they wanted to specifically reach African American moms and talk about that movie and release of its advance and kind of ask our feedback before the movie went public. So that was my first kind of sponsored event.
So how
and then again,
did you get an email?
Yes, actually, and I thought it was a joke because it was a PR company saying we'd love to invite you out. And I replied back, sure, please send me, all the details and all the costs associated with the trip. And then they emailed me back, oh, no, we do mean as our guest. And my husband, I went, oh my God, you're never going to believe what just happened. Disney wants to fly me out. So I'm like, I'm totally going. And yeah, it was an email from a PR company that I knew peripherally, completely out of the blue. So that was the big one. My very first was Disney.
Very nice. And then you went there. What did you do in Florida?
Oh, gosh. Well, Disney sets the bar high. They knew how to do everything right. So we met with executives. We met with Imagineers. Again, it was, we talked about the movie, so they put us in one of the best hotels on property, took us out to some of the best restaurants on property. We got to do behind-the-scenes tours. And then, yeah, after the wined us and dined us, then it was, okay, let's sit down and talk about this movie and your perceptions about the movie and, Q&A, ask us anything, kind of a thing. And then they flew us home. It was a fast weekend.
So did they ask you to write about it and give you a deadline, or they just wanted feedback?
No, they didn't. They just wanted feedback. And so it's nice to go to something like that and not feel pressured that I have to take notes and I have to document every single second of this event because I'm being asked to do this. Of course, I wrote about it because it was amazing. But if you want somebody specifically to write about it, you have to make that ask from the get-go so that they know. It's different when you go to an event and you're not required to write about it versus if you go to an event and they are expecting me to do something with this information by such and such a date. So you kind of pay attention at an event in a different way, more maybe from a journalistic perspective than from an attendee perspective, I guess.
That's interesting. What are your thoughts about the influencer tools that are out there? Clout, Cred, Peer Index, and
Clout. Clout has its place. I do say that one thing is that they have got me pegged because some of the best Clout perks that I've received are alcohol and chocolate. So I must be doing something right because they know that those two things you get me to talk about that way. But I mean, the number, Clout Score, take it with a grain of salt and use it as one piece of a very large puzzle. Because there are people who have low Clout Scores or lower Clout Scores, but I know them in person and I can tell you for a fact that they're extremely influential, both online and offline, because it's getting harder now to measure that because there's things that people do offline, for instance, like book clubs and PTA presidents and, I'm the Girl Scout troop leader and things like that. All those things weave into somebody's influence, you know. And I'll go back to Disney example. We had a block party here in my neighborhood. Somebody mentioned something about Disney, and I said, oh, have you ever been? And we spent a half an hour, 45 minutes talking about whether they should go to Florida with a 3-year-old or not, and where they should stay and things like that. And so I gave them so much advice just based on our experiences that counts for something. Disney may never know that I sent them to Florida for their very first Disney vacation, but that's, you know, that could be how that happened.
Okay. So clout is only part of the picture. Very small
Yes.
part of the picture. Most of it is research, and I think, as I mentioned to the class today, one thing people don't realize is that a lot of the power of social media comes from the work you put into doing your research.
Yes, absolutely. No, research, and then research it again.
Well, thank you. Anything else you want to tell us? If people want to get in touch with Melanie, I have put the link to her Pinterest and Twitter accounts in the description of the video. Make sure you check it.
No, ask me anything. I'm an open book. Social media, there's no secrets here. There's room in the space for everybody. No competition. When you're reaching out to people, again, just make your ask clear from the very get-go. Keep it short and sweet, and if they want more information, they'll be in touch.
Okay, and I remember you told me when you reach out to influencers, don't insult their intelligence or something. Was that something?
Well, yeah, there's that too. You know, don't send me an email addressed as Dear Mommy Blogger, because that's not my name. You know, at least my name is pretty much everywhere. It's in my Twitter handle, so if you don't at least address me by name, your email is going in the circular file. So yeah, just take the time. I appreciate it when people have at least read my last 4 posts and can kind of reference something in there, so at least I know that they're paying attention. But yeah, be respectful, value their time, respect their time, and make the ask, you know, very clear from the very get-go.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Joining us with this such short notice, because I literally called Melanie yesterday and said, we're talking about influencers, why don't you join us? And I couldn't think of anybody better than you, so thank you so much for giving us time. Okay?
You're welcome. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.